Members of the Commission, we are now live.
Welcome. My name
Mike.
is...
Mike.
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Karen Burdett. I am the acting chair of the HPC for the June 12th, 2024 meeting. As is our custom, I would like our commission and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Zara Nasser,
Jeffrey Haynes.
Julie Pelletier.
Cristina Arado,
Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff.
Dan Bruckert, Historic Preservation Staff.
Chris Berger, Historic Preservation Staff.
Thank you. We are going to start tonight doing those hops that have come forward that we believe can be approved by consent. I would like to remind everyone that if you would like to testify tonight in regards to any hop, please fill out a speaker's form right there on the table and give it to the staff right away. We will be hearing 8 hops tonight on consent, and then we will be hearing 2 of them in hearing form. So let me begin. Let's see. For expedited hops, we will be hearing 1A at 108 Water Street, Brookville, 1D at 9819 Capitol View Avenue, Silver Spring, 1E at 7301 Holly Avenue, Tacoma Park, 1G at 7502 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park, 1H at 19811 Darnestown Road, Bealsville, 1I at 9220 Damascus Hills Lane, Damascus, 1J at 7344 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park, and 1K at 10304 Montgomery Avenue, Kensington.
Madam Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with staff reports based upon the record before us in consideration of the recommendations of the local advisory panels and including the conditions recommended by staff. Hop number 1068951 at 108 Water Street, Brookville. Hop number, retroactive hop number 1070209 at 9819 Capitol View Avenue, Silver Spring. Hop number 1070729 at 7301 Holly Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1071522 at 7502 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1071643 at 19811 Darnestown Road, Bealsville. Retroactive hop number 1071680 at 9220 Damascus Hills Lane, Damascus. Hop number 1071722 at 7344 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park. And hop number 1060765 revision at 10304 Montgomery Avenue, Kensington.
Do I have a second?
Before we vote, item D, it looks like it was 2 hop numbers. Retroactive hop.
Yes, that is correct. There were 2 hop numbers for item D.
Got it. Additional hop for 1D was number 170207, and this was for 9819 Capitol View Avenue.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Nasser, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This motion carries. And I'd like to thank all those applicants who brought forth hops that are so easily approved. We do appreciate it. Moving on to the hops that we will be hearing tonight. We will start with Item 1B at 3705 Underwood Street. Is there a staff report?
Yes, this is an historic area work permit application to install a fence at 3705 Underwood Street. The subject property is the Welsh House Master Plan Historic Site in Chevy Chase, built circa 1897. The HPC recently conducted a preliminary consultation and approved a HOP earlier this year for partial demolition, porch infill, and new two-story rear addition, as well as a retroactive roof replacement review. The property is reviewed under the county code and the Secretary of the Interior's rehab standards. Here are photos of the existing house with red arrows to indicate the proposed fence location. The applicant proposes to install 94 linear feet of fencing near the east property line. That's the red line on the site plan. According to the applicant, the neighbor along this east property line already has a open board-on-board fence with trellis on top that ends at the midpoint of the house, which would be next door, approximately here. As you can see, the proposed fence at the subject property will extend from the back corner all the way to the front corner of our subject property. It will be 6 feet tall and built of western red cedar. The applicant seeks to mirror the alignment, height, and approximate design of the 6-foot-tall solid board fence on the neighboring property to the west, which is indicated in blue. Here are representative photos of the proposed fence. Again, a 6-foot-tall solid board fence made of western red cedar. So the HPC's longstanding standard is to limit fence heights to 4 feet tall when they extend beyond the rear wall plane of the building's original footprint. The standard seeks to maintain the openness between houses and historic neighborhoods with the position that fences taller than 4 feet located in side yards create visual barriers between properties and can obscure architecturally significant or notable features of the historic houses. Staff regularly administratively approves 6-foot-tall fences in rear yards and fences less than 4 feet tall in side yards. The applicant's proposal for a 6-foot-tall solid board fence in the side yard conflicts with the HPC's height limit standard. Staff does not support a solid board fence in the side yard beyond the original footprint of the residence as is proposed. Though the property to the east is not a master plan historic site like the subject property, staff contends that the solid fence will create a visual barrier in conflict with Chapter 24A8B1 of the County Code. However, staff would support a fence with a 4-foot-tall solid wood base and 2-foot-tall wood lattice on top in the side yard. And you can see a representative photo of that on the screen. Fence with the lattice top will maintain the HPC's goal of visual openness and connectivity between buildings while providing the applicant with the height they are seeking. A fence with an open top will not disrupt the relationship between the properties and will be compatible in character with the historic site in accordance with Chapter 24A8B1. To meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, the historic character of the property will be retained and preserved by a lattice top fence, and if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment will be unimpaired. Staff recommends one of the two options. The first, the entire 94-foot-long fence segment can have the 4-foot-tall solid wood base with 2-foot-tall lattice on top, or the applicant can install a 6-foot-tall solid board fence in the yard from the back corner, which would be back here, all the way to the original rear wall plane, and then transition to the 4-foot-tall solid board fence with 2-foot-tall lattice on top, a distance of 28 feet. That segment is indicated in a green box here, that 28-foot long segment. Staff also seeks a condition that any trees with a 6-inch diameter at breast height or larger be removed to accommodate the fence. That would require a separate hop. Any questions for staff?
Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. Just out of curiosity, was the idea of that fence ever considered just being a 4-foot fence without the lattice on top?
They could do that as well, but I think they want a taller fence. I'll leave it to the applicant to weigh in on why they want the taller fence.
Okay.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Thank you. The 6-foot fence to the west, Was that a hop? How did they get their 6-foot fence?
That is on and I'll show the aerial. That is on an adjoining property that is not historic. This property right here is not historic. So that fence is on, close to the property line, but it's on a house that is not historic. So they
Okay.
would not have required a hop.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? No? The applicant, if you'd please come forward, identify yourself, and please make sure your mics are on first, please.
Luke Olson, GTM Architects. Hello.
Hi, Richard Renz, homeowner.
Yes, and you can either make a presentation of your own or answer questions from us.
I have a brief statement, if that's all right, and I think.
Please go ahead.
Also as well. The staff report mentions that the goal of not having taller than a 4-foot fence in a side yard extending forward from the rear is to maintain the openness between houses in historic neighborhoods. But this isn't a historic neighborhood. It's a master plan site, and the houses to each side of us can kind of do whatever they want. In fact, the one on the left they've built a taller fence. And so one of the primary goals of this is just to have another fence that matches so that it looks the same on each side. It's also, like, we really have no control over what the neighboring properties will do over time. And so to be able to have a uniform look right now would be important to us. I also think it's worth mentioning that the house is asymmetrically sited on the lot. It's pushed pretty far to the left with about 20 feet of open space on the right-hand side where we're putting our fence in. And this fence is not going to extend back to the house, so it doesn't really block the view. In fact, if you look at Figure 2 in the staff report, you can see the full view of the right side of the house, and then the space, and then the arrow where our fence would start and extend straight back. So the fence isn't going to obstruct that view from the public right away. If anything, it'll just obstruct the view from house to house, which is kind of the point. Good fences make good neighbors is the statement, and that's one of the situations that we're looking at here. It's also worth noting that there's already kind of an obstructed view on the first floor of this house in that we have a wraparound covered front porch, and a portion of that will be infilled per our HOP approvals. So really, the portion that this fence may be partially obstructing if you get far enough to the right down the street is already obstructed by non-historic elements. And it's not going to obstruct that second floor view because you can see over a 6-foot-high fence to the second floor of this house. And in fact, just looking at that image, you can see the whole property from that line, just given that setback there. There are a few different examples of master plan historic properties in this neighborhood that have 6-foot-high board fences already. One of them, I think, is just north of this on William Street. I provided a few different examples in my submission set. So it's not an uncommon condition. I think there's another house at the end of the street on Brookville Road that has a rather tall fence extending back to the house where it actually screens it. Granted, that's on the corner of Thornapple and Brookville, so I'm assuming that's a privacy concern. But just given that the fence is on the property line only, that it doesn't extend from the lot line over to the house to block that view, the openness of the lot on that right side, the current conditions on the first floor where we have non-historic construction already, and our current HOP approvals, I just don't see how this would obscure the architectural features of this house to have a consistent 6-foot-high fence. And honestly, a 6-foot-high fence then stepping down to 4 isn't the best look for us. We'd like something that's consistent on that side. Just given those statements, we'd ask that you approve it without condition 1, and we're fine with condition 2. And then I'll turn it over to Rich.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. And again, I think if you can see on the side, the house that I'm trying to emulate is on the side of the house that's gray in this picture. And you can see the fence. Yes, exactly. And you can see the fence. We're just basically trying to mirror that type of fence on the right side so that the yard is uniform and consistent. So that's really the objective, and that's really what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for the applicants? Commissioner Haynes.
Are we to assume that the evergreens that are shown in these photos are going to be removed to put the fence in? Are those your evergreens, those arborvitaes?
Yes, so the trees that you see there will not be impacted by the addition of the fence. The posts that are there won't come up quite that far, so it should be very unimpacted.
We're thinking that you're digging maybe an 18-inch hole every 5 or 6 feet to put that fence post in, and that's just not enough disturbance to kill a tree. And there might be some pruning potentially, but I don't see that limited impact being that negative to a tree of this sort.
Well, I'm thinking more of the branches of the trees, but, I mean, maybe they're just denser at the front, and I'm looking at the rear elevation, and
Yeah, if you
perhaps
see the
canopies are higher.
If you see the picture, you can see how it's open from the backside. It's a real open space. So where the fence would actually go would be in that open space area.
So if the greenery, the trees and evergreens are staying, seems to me you already have a pretty good visual barrier to your neighbor. Why is it critical to have a 6-foot fence?
So the fence is needed because of a number of reasons, but their house is extremely close to our property line and where their walkway is. And so the fence is really needed because of we're having a lot of impact from them specifically. They've done 4 renovations over the 4 years that I've been in this home. I really should have come to see you guys sooner to get this fence installed, but it has really impacted our ability to enjoy our home. And so this fence is important for us to continue to have a better experience at our home and to improve our relationship with our neighbors.
And if you go back to that last image, that front tree is very full all the way to grade, but once you get behind that, you can walk right over through that. The branches aren't lower beyond that first really full planting. After that, it is open. I mean, I've been back there and walked around, and it was no problem to get over and measure the neighbor fence when I was looking at what the condition is over there and pulling together this application.
Thank you.
Commissioner Galway?
I'm looking at the site plan with the fence that's represented, and I'm a little confused because the property, it looks like the fence is being installed right against the property line. Is that tree on your property, or is that on the neighbor's property?
The tree that you're seeing, the big green arborvitae, that is on my property.
Okay, so is the fence going to be on the outside of that tree, or on the house side of that tree?
Yeah, so what you're not seeing, and maybe should have took a picture of the inside portion, most of the tree is shaped. So the inside portion, there are no branches, there are no trees. There are branches coming on the outside where you're seeing there, but on the inside, there are no obstruction, no branches. They're all, because I can walk through there without being hit by anything. So where the fence will come up right to the side of the house, which is what the section requires, and it'll be placed there, and it will not be impacted. If there is any branch growth, it can be easily trimmed. So it will not be impacted by the tree.
So it'll
The fence
be
will not.
your house, then it'll be tree, and then it'll be fence?
It'll be, so if we're going from, okay, so if you're going from the house,
Tree is forward of the fence.
it is.
It
would
is,
be
oh, okay.
forward of the fence.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not shown here, and it's kind of hard to tell.
Right.
It's like right next to the front porch, the side of the front porch.
So it's almost going to be aligned with the end of the fence? Is that more accurate, or?
Yeah, I'd say that's a more accurate representation of the location of the tree.
Yeah, and if you can see on the left side where the fence comes up on my neighbor's side, that's basically where this fence would end. So it just has to be, it can only come up to the front of the house. It can't go to the deck, the front of the deck.
Right. All right,
And,
thank you.
and if it's a concern, I mean, we can just hold the fence a little bit shorter of that tree
Right.
But we'd like to extend it up at least to like the backside of that tree to be able to provide the privacy.
And consistency.
And then the tree can pick it up from there.
Understood, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Commissioner Pelletier.
Thank you. What's the issue with doing the fence that was suggested by staff? I mean, they're basically telling you can do a 6-foot fence. It's just not going to match your neighbor's fence. Is that
Right.
it?
We want it uniform, so we want it consistent, and we would prefer, my wife and I would prefer to have that type of fence. We already have existing, as you can see on the neighbor's side, to match that one than what's already on our neighbor's side on this side.
You just don't want to see your neighbors.
Well, I mean.
That's
partially.
legit. I get
Right.
that.
Yeah. And they have lattice on theirs already, so we're really trying to match the other one.
Who has lattice?
The house on the right from the picture, which I don't know if you'll see in this picture.
Do they
but
have a fence?
They do,
It
But it only
extends like
comes
about
up
halfway up the line.
yeah, halfway up.
Okay, so it's not showing in this picture of the backyard, but there's a fence.
There
On
it
the
is.
neighboring property.
Is it a 6-foot fence or is it a 4-foot
It's a
fence?
6-foot fence.
But it only goes to approximately where, like the back of your house, kind of?
It's a little bit forward of that, but like not significantly forward of that. Their house extends a little bit further back, and it seems to come up to where the addition started on the back of that house.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's nothing that's going to keep your neighbors in the gray house from switching out that fence someday if they, like that's not something, I mean, I can sort of understand you wanting to match it, but that's not your fence.
We have no control over what they can do. They could
Right.
remove the fence completely, and then we'd have no fence. And so.
Right,
we'd
on
like to
that
have-
side of the
Yeah.
house. So,
And if that were to happen, then I would just extend it all around.
right. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, that was my question I was going to ask. So if we have no more questions, does anybody want to start deliberations on this or make a motion?
I'll start. I at least ask the question. We as the HPC understand, your house is properties isolated and surrounded by non-historic homes. But at the same time, it is our intention and goals as the Preservation Commission to maintain streetscape, to keep barriers, whether they're visual or physical, that might impede the streetscape or the visual connection of the street to the house. While you have vegetation there, that vegetation could die in 2 years, a disease come through. So we really look at it as if the vegetation is not there, because unlike your neighbor on the left side, the gray house, there's just a big tree there. It's very visible from the sidewalk. I feel like the 6-foot fence with a 24-inch lattice top is a reasonable compromise to allow you, some privacy, but at the same time provide a lighter fence, if you will, visually and physically, that as you move about on the sidewalk maintains that. And so my personal position would be to recommend to you to take the 6-foot fence with a 24-inch lattice on top.
The 4-foot fence.
I'm sorry, total 6, with the 4-foot solid 2-foot lattice on top.
Would anybody like to add anything to this? I have one quick question back to staff. We have another case here tonight about a fence, and in that in that package, there were illustrations or photographs illustrating semi-private fences. Would that be applicable for this case, or is it only the solid board?
You know, the staff and the HPC, we look at this on a case-by-case basis. That application is a corner lot in Tacoma Park, in the Tacoma Park District. So, you know, Mr. Bruker can also jump in if there's anything else to add on that. But we were looking at other representative examples, you know, coming up with other range of options that might be appropriate to consider for that lot. This solution that the staff is proposing, we felt was the most appropriate for this master plan site.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, Commissioner Haynes, you have made your motion? Or would you like to?
I will make a motion.
Thank you.
So I move that the Historic Preservation Commission, in accordance with the standards set forth in Section 24A of Montgomery County Code, approve HOP number 1068796 at 3705 Underwood Street to include the two staff recommendations and the recommendation of a 4-foot tall solid board fence with a 2-foot lattice on top for a total height of 6 feet from the frontmost point to the back plane of the house, and condition 2, any 6-inch diameter tree at breast height or larger to be removed to accommodate the fence, inquire a separate hop.
I'm sorry, what?
No, the recommendation is from the front to the back plane of the house, and then they can go solid board on board at 6 feet from there.
Do I hear a second for this motion?
This is Commissioner Pelletier, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays or any abstentions? Then this motion that's been made is passed, and it follows the staff's recommendations. So the staff can speak to you about what comes next, and you might want to discuss with them variations on lattice from what.
Can I ask for a clarification, please?
Yes.
I understood the staff's recommendation to say it was going to be 6 foot with the lattice running all the way back, but I think you said it could be solid board from the rear plane of the house back with lattice just in the section that's in the side yard. Is that what was approved?
Now, as I understand the staff's recommendation, they're recommending the rear wall plane to the front wall plane, a distance of 28 feet, which is consistent with what I was saying.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Okay, next one is hop number 1F at 25 Heskett Street, Chevy Chase. And is there a staff report?
Yes, there is, Madam Chair. This is the staff report for 25 Hesketh Street. It's hop number 1071279, and it's a retroactive hop consideration. What you see is actually a photograph from several years ago because there are a lot of trees in the yard and it's difficult to photograph the house. So this is an opportunity to see the house before all of this work was completed. So it's a contributing resource to the Chevy Chase Village Historic District, constructed circa 1910. This is reviewed under the Village Historic District Design Guidelines, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. So the applicant proposes to replace 3 different roof surfaces, install new gutters and downspouts, and wrap the soffits in vinyl. Again, this work has been completed, but the HPC's decision should be reached as if no work has been undertaken. And this is the house before the work was done. You can see exposed rafter tails on the porch here. And then you can see the exposed rafter tails on the rear here and here. I will note that from this bracket back is an addition that the HPC approved, I believe, 20 years ago. But the exposed rafter tails were maintained in the addition roof and the rear-facing dormer. So in the roof, the three sections of roofing are an architectural shingle roof on the principal gable, a membrane roof on top of the front and rear shed dormers, and a standing seam metal roof on the wraparound porch. And you can see examples of these roofs that are currently installed in the photos in front of you. And then the other item under discussion is the applicant proposes to repair the existing soffits and wrap them in vinyl. So again, what you see before you in the lower right is the before image, and then after in the upper left. And the applicant provided a number of photographs showing the condition of the soffit, which is significantly deteriorated. And you'll note that the previous gutters were installed directly to the rafter tails. There was no fascia board in front of them. And then again, these are contemporary images showing the soffit boxed in, which covers a portion of the roof brackets, and again on the right. So staff finds the gutters and downspouts do not require a hop as stated in the design guidelines. And staff finds that the proposed roofing is compatible with the character of the resource and surrounding district. The membrane roof is not at all visible from the public right-of-way because of the low slope of the roofs. The low slope of the metal roof minimizes its visual impact, and the caps over the hips do not substantially alter the roof profile. And the HPC has consistently found that replacing a 3-tab shingle with an architectural shingle roof is a compatible alteration. Staff finds the soffits show significant signs of rot in multiple locations. However, staff does not find wrapping the soffits in vinyls is a recommended treatment for several reasons, including it obscures the character-defining exposed rafter tails and a portion of the roof brackets. Wrapping the soffits can accelerate deterioration because the vinyl can trap moisture and the wood condition can't be monitored. And vinyl is generally a disfavored material because it does not accurately reproduce the visual characteristics of painted wood. Again, it doesn't develop a patina, and it usually doesn't hold paint very well. Staff further notes that this is the type of project is why the county adopted the historic preservation tax credits, which helps narrow the cost gap between restoring a feature and an incompatible repair. And the Chevy Chase Local Advisory Panel submitted testimony supporting the staff recommendation, including the recommendation. So staff recommends the HPC approve the HOP for the roofing, but an included condition that limits the approval to only the roof work and requires the applicant to restore the soffits and exposed rafter tails. A fascia board may be installed on the rafters to mount the gutters, and staff recommends an additional requirement that this work must be completed within 90 days of the HPC's decision. And approval of this HOP with the identified condition is consistent with Chapter 24A, 8B, 1 and 2, Section D, the design guidelines and standards 2, 9, and 10. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Pelletier?
Are the rafter tails that we're looking at in the back, they're new-ish?
Yes, I can pull up the date, but the HPC approved an addition. You can see the ground floor of the historic portion of the house is stucco.
I see it, yeah.
So where it transitions to shingle siding on the first floor, everything above that was a rear sort of family room addition on the ground floor, which actually projects beyond the historic wall plane, which is what created the wraparound porch. That's actually not a historic feature.
Oh, okay.
So everything that you see on the rear is non-historic, but again, those features were carried into the addition. So it historically had exposed rafter tails, and that was just a feature that was a design feature that was included in the addition.
So the back originally, before the addition went on, had exposed rafter tails?
Correct.
And on the on this side of, the right side of the image that we're looking at, this is the before, correct?
Correct.
So are the brackets, other than the brackets that are on the addition, are the other brackets historic?
I believe they are.
And did those disappear when they,
So
When they
these
did
three
this-
brackets are equally spaced.
right? But can you go to back to the photo of the new, did the brackets go away entirely?
No,
No, they're still-
so the brackets were maintained, it's just the upper portion sort of got covered up.
Okay,
I think in some ways, the fact that the upper member of the bracket that's mounted to the soffit is so heavy. A lot of times you'll see brackets that are closer to an equilateral triangle.
right.
That by boxing in the soffit, you would have encapsulated some of the diagonal member. And in this case,
I see.
that didn't happen. It's just some of the, I don't know if it's a 6x6 up there. Some of that was captured by the soffit enclosure.
So how much of the actual historic soffits got closed in?
I mean, all of it is boxed in.
But some of it's new, some of it's an addition.
Right, so again, like, this portion of the house is an addition.
Right.
Everything to the rear. But
They've done it
when it was
all.
designed, it was extended, this, the soffit profile was continued on from the original house design.
And is it on all, all the
Yes.
soffits on the entire house?
Yes.
Old and new,
So this
all
is-
got boxed in?
So here you see the left and the rear.
Right.
And then.
At the front.
Here you see the right, and I think that's the left as well. So here you see the right, and then the underhang on the front is difficult to get from an angle just because of how.
But it was also boxed in on the
Yes.
front? Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No? All right, if the applicant would like to come forward, we have Patrick Van Meter and James Hawley, please. And please make sure your mics are on, and then identify yourselves for the record and your relationship to this project.
Hello.
There you go.
Good evening, Vice Chair and Commissioners. My name's James Hawley.
Hi, I'm Patrick Van Meter. I'm the homeowner. And if it's okay, would like to make a brief statement, then happy to answer any questions you may have. My name is, first, thank you to the Vice Chair and the Commissioners. Thank you for your work. I also want to thank Dan for his work and communication and professionalism. I'm going to disagree with him a little bit tonight, but I certainly appreciate his professionalism and his work. My wife Whitney and I bought 25 Hesketh Street about 2 years ago, and joined by James Hawley, our roofer, who will be able to answer more of your technical questions about why we made this decision and why we went the route that we did. But essentially, when we bought the house 2 years ago, it needed a lot of work. It needed a lot of love and care. It had been a rental property for many years before we bought it. But we saw its potential, we saw its character. We love that about it. We love that about the neighborhood. And so thank you all for your work in keeping this neighborhood and all of Montgomery County and the Historic District special. One of the issues that we found was that the roof was in really bad shape. It was completely rotting and had to be replaced, as you saw from some of the photos there. We've got a great roofer, James, and we followed his guidance as well as from our contractors on how to best fix the problem and to prevent future problems. I appreciate the staff recommendations to approve the application for the roof repairs, but would respectfully request that the commission decline the staff recommendation that we restore the soffits to their previous condition. I did not, I'm not a builder, I'm not very handy. I did not honestly know what a soffit was before we heard from Dan. But once the work was completed, I would say that I did not notice any massive change in the appearance of the aesthetic of the home. As was described in the report, only that obviously we had saved the roof from caving in. The only comments that we heard from neighbors were that they were appreciative that we were fixing up the house and taking care of it. I disagree that the work completed takes away from the character of the home. In fact, it's difficult to even see unless you walk directly next to the home and look straight up. I'm not able to debate architectural history, but from the perspective of a neighbor walking down the street, I think this is a negligible change. And as Dan mentioned in his presentation, there are lots of trees in the front, so it's actually very hard to see. He actually had to use a photo from several years ago because you can't actually get a good vantage point of the house without looking at a very old photo. And then in the back, as he mentioned, those soffits that were there were not actually historic. You know, I think I'm very lucky to live in Chevy Chase Village. We work very hard to be able to live there and raise our family there. I would just respectfully ask that the commission approve the retroactive work permit in full, including the enclosed soffits, so that we don't need to replicate that work. It would be costly, time-consuming, it would be a disturbance to our neighbors, wasteful, and it's simply unnecessary. I do have a letter that was signed by 5 of our neighbors on our block on Hesketh Street in support of our request. I think I saw on the agenda that these needed to be submitted maybe 2 days ago. I only learned about this hearing and that we would be considered here on Friday afternoon. I work full-time. I was traveling until Sunday. I also have 3 children under the age of 6. My wife also works full-time. I would have loved to have had this in sooner, but I hope you'll consider the fact that the neighbors on our block agree with our position that this is a very negligible change and not worth requiring us to replicate this work. Thank you very much for your consideration, and we're very happy to take any of your questions. Thank you.
I'll also like to add that during my inspection of the property, one of the main things that I noticed, there were a lot of nails going through the soffits. This is due to the soffit wood decking being exposed as wood decking. So you can imagine, due to the deterioration of the roof, once we remove the shingles, we cause more damage to those soffits because of all the nails, as you see in that photo. And there were other areas that had that same issue. Not only that, but installing new shingles, we have to use 6 nails per shingle. We would only cause more damage to the soffits. And the manufacturer who makes the shingles require 1.5 inch nail to be used. So that's something that we kind of took into consideration before making that decision. So that was something that wasn't mentioned by Dan. I just wanted to bring up.
Okay, Commissioner Redu?
I have a question for the roofer. Just the photographs show that the sheeting or the wood planks there are rotted. Were they all replaced? All the perimeter of the roof was replaced?
Yes, so during the roof replacement, we saw rotted wood in those areas that were replaced. And of course, once we replaced those, the existing kind of T111 design that you see would be different because we used a 1/2 inch CDX. So we replaced all the areas that had rotted wood.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Burditt. I have some questions. This is a retroactive HOP for all the roof repairs. You've lived in this neighborhood for 2 years now. You were not aware that you needed to come in front of the HPC for any exterior repairs and renovations?
As Dan mentioned in his report, I think the main roof repair was consistent with the design standards, so did not require a HOP. So I believe that, at the time, I believed that the work that we were doing on the roof was consistent with the design standards and did not require it. So no, I was not aware of that.
And when you discovered that you did have rotten wood and that you were going to actually cover up aspects of the detailing of the house, that you also didn't think to contact the staff for any advice or opinion?
No, ma'am, I did not. I believe that a roof repair that was consistent with the design standards would not require it.
And when
This is the first time I've lived in a historic district. I know that it's ignorance of the rules is not an excuse, but I'm originally from Kentucky. I've never lived in a historic district before. Yes, I've lived here for 2 years, but this is my first experience with the commission. I will know better next time, obviously.
I also want to mention, it's probably more so my fault as the contractor. Of course, I worked in historic districts before, Alexandria and Georgetown, and I'm normally telling homeowners that you do have to reach out to the historic district before you make any changes. I did a roof replacement across the street from his house, where we replaced some slate, and that homeowner, from what I believe, didn't reach out, or I didn't have to do anything with the historic. So I also wasn't aware that that district was historic. But when I am aware, I do mention to the homeowners that they definitely need to reach out.
So I'm thinking about, well, the issue we have is encasing the soffits. And one, you are covering up details of the house, and they are significant details. And on the back, they may be new, but they were the extension of, they were replicating details that when the addition was done, they were moved back. But on the front of the house in particular, there are significant details, particularly for Chevy Chase. I guess I understand that because of the requirements for roofing and roofing materials, that the size of the nails was going to penetrate through and be visible, but I'm questioning why at that point the decision was made to encase the soffit in its entirety instead of, finding a solution that maintains some of the detailing without, and allowing the proper length of nail to be used but not be visible. So I guess that's, like, was it such an automatic thing that, oh, the nails are showing, we're just going to cover this up and wrap it?
No, not necessarily. Of course, this is a beautiful home. In sheds and attic spaces, you do see nails go through those areas. But because of the visibility of that, we didn't want to be the company to just do the nails through the soffits and let it be. When you have a fascia board or rake board, you want to wrap that rake board as we did in aluminum, and that creates a channel for us to allow to put in a soffit. The soffits are vinyl, but they don't rot. The color doesn't deteriorate a lot quicker as wood would. So the decision was to be more practical and proactive to not have the issues that he had before. That was more so the thought, not just encase the existing profile or integrity of the home.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Pelletier.
Was the condition of the soffits in the front better than the condition of the soffits in the back?
All throughout the perimeter of the house, there was some rotting, not only rotting, carpenter bees were getting to the wood. A lot of the moisture had already gotten through. So a lot of soft spots also in that overhang. So it was pretty consistent throughout the whole home.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Commissioner Haynes.
Along that same line, so how did you replace the sheathing? Did you remove the rotted sheathing and replace it with plywood? Is that?
Correct. We used a 1/2-inch CDX plywood. Of course, once the roof shingles were removed, we did see damage to the wood in those areas. So we replaced the soffit wood with plywood, 1/2-inch plywood.
How thick was the original soffit material? I mean, the sheathing material? Typically 3/4 inch plank?
Probably 3/8 inch is what's more common with older homes. This particular type of soffit, I believe, is a T111, which could be less than 1/2 inch, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't on site during the removal.
So you're saying the T111s was the entire roof, was sheathed, used
It was-
to sheathe the entire roof?
No, only on the edges of the perimeter where the soffits were.
Because typically, it would have been 3/4 inch thick plank on the original house, and that would have extended out to the soffit, to the rake board. So I find it interesting that different thicknesses would have created a visual line. You would have seen that in the roofing, but I think the real issue is that, there are tax credits available to help offset the cost of repairing original materials and systems. And that's what we would have really preferred to see. The details matter. I mean, to your point of you love the character of the neighborhood, and we're here to preserve that. So one of the character-defining features of the home is the broad overhang with exposed rafters, rafter tails, and that's a really strong architectural feature of the house. So that's now covered up all around the house, as I understand, front and back and the sides. So it does diminish the architectural character of the house. Whether you understand that or not is one thing, but it really does. So thank you. I sort of went off there, but that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, then we will start our deliberations, which Commissioner Haynes kind of started. Would
Well,
you
I
like to
kinda-
continue, or?
No, I think I've said my thoughts there.
Anybody else would like to comment? Commissioner Pelletier?
I guess I have a comment. I agree that the rafter tails are a significant feature of this house. I think when you start putting vinyl soffits on, you can't tell when it was built. It might have been in the 90s or, not the 1890s, the 1990s. I do have less of an issue with it on the addition. Because it's in the back and because it's 20 years old or whatever, that's why I was asking if the ones in the front, because usually the original material lasts a lot longer than the material, that was put on in the 80s or whatever. I guess my feeling is that I think the front is important. I think anything that's visual from the street is important to restore that detail. I feel less strongly about it in the back. Like, I guess my feeling is you need to do some of it, but you wouldn't, in my opinion, you wouldn't necessarily have to do it all. Things that don't show from the street or things that are not original to the original house, I have less heartburn about. So that's kind of my feeling about it. I mean, I'm sure the roof it looks like you did a great job on the roof. And it's going to last a while and stuff, but I think the rafter tail's missing, especially from the front of the house, I think is it's kind of tragic on this beautiful house. But the back, I feel less strongly about. That's what I have to say.
Any other comments from anyone? If not, I'll finish, but I just want to make sure everybody has their chance. All right, I'll go then. Yes, you live in a historic district full of absolutely stunning homes. I mean, Chevy Chase is a really extraordinary community of amazing homes because they were homes for wealthy people and they were crafted beautifully in their time. And they have, for the most part, they've stood the test of time, and we are here to protect them for this generation and for the subsequent generations of owners. Diminishing the detailing, the exterior detailing, is inappropriate as a property owner of one of these beautiful homes. It's kind of dumbing down the house. If you go out into the suburbs, you will see a great number of houses that are of similar size, and the better ones will have a similar appearance, but they won't lack, or they will not have the detailing that is obvious in this house. And that's the dumbing down. That's the McMansion kind of look. It's like it's close and it looks good from the road, but it isn't the same. And this is an original house. And those rafter tails and the brackets in their full depth were one of the were things that made this house special. And the repairs to the roof are fine, we, you know, we don't require you to put on shake shingles or even slate anymore. The products you use are very good and will last a very good long time and will protect the house. But wrapping the soffits in vinyl is inappropriate. And it's also a risk because you're hiding, you've had an issue with those soffits with pests, with water, with rot. And now you've covered them up with vinyl and you can't see. Now maybe the roof is going to be fine now for the next 20 years until it gets replaced and you won't have any problems. But if you do, you're not going to see it. And when you get back behind that vinyl, you can have a problem. And that is also a concern with historic properties, is hiding the original material behind a material that has inherent issues with breathing or with hiding it, whatever. I understand Commissioner Pelliter's point that the rear of the house is an addition, so therefore it is less consequential, other than the owner that put the addition on did install the rafter tails out of a love for the house or respect for the house for whatever reason, because it's not an insignificant detail to add to new construction. You don't see it added to new construction, and they chose to do it out of respect for the house. So my comment is, while the roof is fine, the soffits to add the gutters onto are fine. I cannot support covering up the original detailing of this significant house, 1918 house, and a contributing resource in Chevy Chase. It's just not a road that I can go down, and I concur with the staff's recommendations. And if there are no more comments, then I would ask for a motion to be made.
I kind of want to mention that I don't think putting in the soffits are hiding anything. Soffits are very common with most homes, new homes, and even with older homes that had old soffits that were wood. A lot of people do transition to putting in the vinyl. The rafter tails are exposed because there is no, or of course the rafters are on the home in the frame of the house and they just extend out to be visibly shown. And it does look nice. But also with the rafter tails being exposed, there's no fascia board, especially on the front, which the existing or the old gutters were attached to. We use hidden hangers every 12 inches to attach those gutters. And I think it was a difference with the old ones because the rafter tails, I don't think were 12 inches apart. So I don't think we're hiding anything or you're going to have any problems with the roof to where, I mean, the shingles are 50-year shingles, so there really shouldn't really be any issues with moisture coming into the soffits for the next 50-plus years. But I don't think we were attempting to hide anything. So I just kind of want to mention that.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the Historic Preservation Commission, in accordance with the standards set forth in Section 24A of Montgomery County Code, approve retroactive HOP number 1071279 at 25 Hesketh Street, Chevy Chase, based on the condition of the staff report. So we would approve the roof work, the asphalt shingle, the flat roof work. That is all approvable. What we would not approve or extend approval to is the soffit enclosure. The soffit must be returned to its previous condition with exposed brackets and rafter tails consistent with Chapter 24A 8B1, 2, and D, and the Chevy Chase Village Historic District Guidelines, as well as the Secretary of Interior Standards 2, 9, and 10. And that the applicant should work with the staff to investigate what tax credits can help financially assist in the restoration of this work.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Nasser, I'll second.
I'd like to do a roll call for this one, please, starting with you, Commissioner Nasser.
Yeah, yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-1.
Thank you.
I have one more
Thank
question.
you.
If okay.
Thank you.
Is the rafter tails the only thing you guys want to see exposed? Do you guys care about the beaded soffit itself? So if the soffit itself was,
It's both. Dan will be in touch with you tomorrow to go over the next steps for this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the preliminaries. Our first preliminary is 2A at 6700 Needwood Road, Durwood. Is there a staff report?
Yes, this is a preliminary consultation for the Needwood Mansion Master Plan Historic Site. It was built circa 1856 as a residence and is now an office for Montgomery County Park staff. It's reviewed under the county code and the Secretary of the Interior's rehab standards. The applicant will go into more detail about the plan shortly, but we broke down the changes in the staff report to first the mansion alterations, grading and landscape alterations, new drainage system, various building envelope updates and repairs, and porch modifications to accommodate ADA improvements, and then improvements to bring access from the parking lot over here on this side of the building to bring it into ADA compliance by building a ramp, also a toilet pad, and a ramp within the porch back here, which you'll see in further detail to enter the door. So for the mansion alteration, staff supports removal of the trees, vegetation, and mulch, the drainage improvements, the new wood windows at the basement, the new steel window well on the rear elevation, the chimney caps, the new wood window on the third floor, storm windows with screens, and alterations to the screen wall. Staff is not in favor of venting the restrooms through the historic brick and would prefer it go through the wood siding on the addition instead. Staff finds all the proposed ADA improvements meet the applicable regulations. These are the van accessible parking space and adjacent access aisle with signage, the accessible portable toilet pad, the accessible path from the ADA space to the rear porch with the signage, pedestrian path from the parking lot drive aisle to the building's rear entrance, removal of the rear porch stairs, construction of a ramp at the rear porch, and a ramp at the existing rear entrance within the porch. In the HOP application, staff seeks a single continuous numbering system for each mansion and ADA improvement, a rear elevation drawing that includes the proposed ramps, a completed drainage plan, HVAC pads included on the site plan with their dimensions and material labeled, a statement on alternative solutions to the louvered vents proposed for going through the masonry, and specifications or details for each respective building feature. We request your feedback on the following mansion alterations. I showed these in a previous slide, so I won't repeat them. And the same for feedback on the ADA improvements for the mansion. This photo here is of the rear elevation of the building, so the ramp will extend at the back of the existing porch, and these stairs will be removed to accommodate the new entrance from the ramp. And before the applicant's representatives begin their presentation, do you have any questions for staff?
Commissioner Pelletier?
On the diagram, with all the numbered, what is 17?
I'd have to pull up the plans. It looks like,
It's not listed down below, and I thought maybe it was 1 and 7, but 7 is removing mulch and vegetation out the window. So
if I can read,
is it in the presentation? Because I sort of skimmed the presentation, honestly, but I didn't see I assume it's window replacement?
Yeah, I don't think
maybe?
it's necessarily window replacement. I may be able to zoom in here. The original
Is it-
numbering system is in much smaller letters up here, and I think
Make,
it looks
make
like
the
an-
window operable?
Yeah, so it
Yes.
Oh,
looks,
okay, okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Radu, did you? Commissioner Galway?
And this is Commissioner Galway. The wood window that's being added, is that replacing a window, or is that a new penetration?
I believe it's filling in an empty space right now. The applicant representatives can confirm that when they have their opportunity.
All right, thank you.
Can you elaborate a bit on venting through the masonry? I'm assuming you're talking about them putting a actual vent hole with a cap on it and not just,
Right.
okay.
Yes, there'll be small openings they propose. I believe one is on the front elevation and one is on a side elevation. Another one's on the back elevation, which I'll show the photo. Would go through the back of the wood addition here, but two are proposed. At least two are proposed for the brick masonry. So we prefer them to obviously go through the wood siding. If that's not possible, try to minimize damage to the masonry as much as possible.
What's the roofing material? Is that slate or?
It looks like slate. I'll have the applicant confirm that, but that
Okay.
definitely looks like slate.
Any other questions? If not, would the applicant please come forward? We are Cassandra Michaud and Eileen Emmett. And please make sure the mics are on and identify yourselves, please.
It'll turn green when it's on.
Cassandra Michaud, Cultural Resources Stewardship Supervisor for Montgomery Parks.
Eileen Emmett, I'm the project manager at the MNC PPC Montgomery Parks Park Development Division. So I'm here with Cassandra, and I'd like to say that the architectural firm for the project is Michael Graves. They're primarily doing the building and doing the design and the permit documents. We're at 60% design. And then the site alterations are being done in-house by the Park Development Division, the engineers, and the architects in the section in which I work. Cassandra's going to give a short overview of the needs and the goals of the project.
Thank you, and I want to thank the Vice Chair and the Commissioners, and all the staff time has been put into this and listening to our presentation tonight. We are really pleased to be here to share this project. It is near and dear to our heart because this is where our staff offices are for cultural resources stewardship. This building has served as staff offices for a while for the archaeology program and in the northern region for the parks, and we have recently consolidated all the staff of our section in this building. We want to move forward with this project to ensure the long-term function as an office space and to continue its productive use into the future by making these appropriate alterations to accommodate both staff and program needs. The Cultural Resources Stewardship section receives an annual appropriation of $650,000 a year, and that is to maintain our inventory of over 100 buildings, which is not nearly enough for what we want to do or what we need to do. And that is why we are so grateful to be able to work in partnership with our peers at the Parks Development Division to make these large capital improvements to historic structures like Needwood Mansion. And that's what we're going to be doing here today, proposing today with the Needwood Mansion. We've committed a substantial portion of our restoration for historic structures, which is what that CIP fund is called, towards this project and making sure that we are maintaining this locally significant resource. So one of the main elements of this project is to improve the air conditioning and dehumidification systems, in fact, to add them and improve the climate control, both for staff and for collections management. Needwood Mansion is the archaeological collections repository for the parkland excavations. We have at least 290 individual collections that account for about 750,000 artifacts, as well as archival research across Many historians and many researchers, including those of Mike Dwyer, are housed in Needwood Mansion. And we want to make sure that they are available in perpetuity and have an appropriate environment for storage and research by anyone who is interested. So we appreciate your feedback on our initial plans, and with that, I'll pass it back to Eileen to go through some of those.
All right, thank you, Cassandra. I'd also like to thank Chris and Rebecca for their guidance to this point in the project. We've had a few meetings with them. It has been a challenge to find the right solution for the accessible path into the building, and I'll show you that in some slides. As I'm speaking, I think Chris is going to run through some of the photos of the building, and then I'll start walking you through the site plan. We have reviewed the recommendations of staff, and we feel comfortable that we can work with all of the conditions that they've mentioned, although we still need our architect involved to answer some of the vent questions. Just very briefly, the main components of the work are the new air conditioning and the dehumidification system, so all the component parts that go with that on the exterior of the building. The landscape alterations on the perimeter drainage system, that's to prevent moisture getting into the basement. Very important to regrade. The removal of trees and shrubs and positive drainage away from the building are important. That's why we're removing the number of existing trees and shrubs around the front and the west. And the accessible parking space and the paths and the ramp to get into the building. It's a long route across the driveway. It's a 3-foot rise from where we're showing the parking space, the single van accessible space, coming across 2 segments of the driveway, a tree island, a path just to get to a landing that will take you into the basement of the building, and then you've got another 7.5 feet up to the porch, and then another 6 inches from the porch to the house. So this plan that you're looking at shows all of that accessible path along the back of the building. What you're also seeing around the front, the dotted line in the light orange, is the drainage trench. It will go down to a 6-inch PVC pipe buried in gravel, and it will drain all the water away. It will also collect the downspouts on the front of the house, and those green lines go to rock outfalls that will be underground lines, taking all the drainage as far as possible away from the building. Next slide. And this is a blow-up of the ramp section. We studied many alternatives. The light blue was sort of on grade, no railings on that path. The yellow is a landing. The purple is a ramp. A ramp is a slope about less than 8%. It has railings. The 2 outer sections are on grade, and the intersection against the porch in purple has a guardrail on the outer edge and around the landing that goes up to the porch. In the next slide, I'll show you. This is the image of the existing house in the upper right corner. We're removing that masonry stair, and we're going to be relocating that screen porch door. And you can see how the outer sections of the ramp sit on grade. 3 rail railings are what we typically install in parks. And then you can see the guardrail. That porch is 72 feet long, and pretty much the ramp, the first segment is 62 feet, and it's maybe another 50 feet going back to make that grade transition. Next slide. This is just a closer up view where we're calling out some of the materials on the metal railing. We're envisioning the guardrail with the wood posts. We're planning on a concrete walkway. It's probably more cost-effective and more durable. So that would be on all segments of the ramp going up to the house. And we're proposing this 4-inch grid infill. On the landing side at the porch, we're proposing just some lattice infill like the existing condition on the main house. Next slide. So if we still have time, I'll walk you quickly. These are the images that were in your packet. So you can see more clearly, number 6 is a new wood window, so there is an opening there that we're going to replace to match a window that's adjacent. So you'll see number 20 on the far right block, that's the west block of the building, well, not, and there's one in the center block. Those were just hypothetical locations to put through-wall vents for the restrooms. So behind that window in the center block, there's actually 2 restrooms in a series. I've spoken to the architect, and they said they could probably relocate those to the side wall, combine them into 1 vent instead of 2. But we can work with staff. We understand they'd prefer to be coming out of the frame part of the building. If we can snake it over there and still get some functionality of it. The number 20 on the west wing, which is on the right, they've already told me that can be threaded through the ceiling and go out the back of the house. It still go through the brick, but I don't know that we could really get it across to the frame part of the house. Next slide. So here you see number 20. They told me that they could push that back closer towards the frame building on the left side of that window. You'll see that this is the east stair is proposed to remain. Next slide. On the right, we're going to retain the existing steps, masonry steps to come off the west end of the porch, but in the center of that bay will be replaced and moved over to the right for the new door. These drawings were made before we finalized the ramp design. Next slide. Same on this end. We're not going to have that new stair that's shown there in the image A. Next slide. This just shows you where the locations of the restrooms are. We are going to modify the basement to be an ambulatory restroom, but primarily the basement is reserved for staff use, and the public is not going to be coming into the basement because of all the archival material. We will vent through the wall underneath the porch. Next slide. Let's see. I guess this is the new condition. The previous was the demo. Well, stay here for a second. The bubbles indicate locations for the HVAC unit condensing pads. So the 2 on the west, there'll be 2 units on the west behind the west wing, and then under the porch there could be up to 4 units that are required for the dehumidification. We haven't quite finalized that yet, but we prefer it under the porch than outside on the east where they had proposed it previously. Next slide. So this is the house. You can see on the west wing the existing restroom, the small yellow block. We're going to actually move it to the north where that shaded yellow area is. Next slide. So this shows the new restroom. So this is where this is the accessible restroom, and this is the destination that visitors have to get to for ADA compliance. Luckily, we don't have to change the size of any door openings because everyone uses the rear entrance from the porch to get in and out of the house, visitors and staff. So, and there's double doors there that we propose to remain. We looked at converting it to one wide door, very wide door, but then we have some issues with landing sizes that keep growing, so we can avoid that. Next slide. This just shows you there's going to be some modifications on the second floor where to make more space for staff. Next slide. And this is the same on the second floor. This is the new condition. We'll be putting a hallway through where you see that number 1, and on both in the east wing and the frame building and in the center block. Next slide. So this is, I think, the third floor, and we're going to be abandoning that restroom, sort of just taking the fixtures out. There's been water damage. This floor isn't used for anything other than storage. Next slide. that concludes our presentation. Before I conclude, I'll just say that the reason we're here is because we hope that you can give us some level of certainty that we're moving in the right direction on this project. We would like to move forward with final design, and if you have any questions or concerns, I think we're prepared to answer those this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Redu?
You mentioned that this building will have some archive storage. I mean, artifacts, I guess. How critical is the humidification?
It is very critical for long-term stability of certain types of artifacts. Some artifacts are not affected, so, stone items, things like that. But metal, ceramics and glass, and fabric and paper, as part of the documentary record, are all highly susceptible to both humidity and temperature changes. And high humidity is not good for them. So it is very critical.
But I guess my question is, in my experience, these older buildings are very high to ensure that the building envelope is really tight. Not only the building envelope has issues for maintaining the humidity levels, even if you add equipment, but also you're proposing to make windows operable. I mean, it seems like that's kind of defeats the purpose of.
Agreed, and I think that the collections are all, certainly the collections are all in the basement. So Eileen just pointed out the basement area where the public will not have access except when they're doing research. That's where the collections are. And so those windows will not be operable at all.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Galway?
I saw in the drawings you had an add alternate for a wet lab. Can you explain what that would be?
So we have an existing lab, actually, that's a wet lab that's used for processing artifacts that we excavate in the field, and they need to we bring them into the wet lab to clean them so that we can then identify them. The add alternate is to modify that existing lab to make it more functional.
And then follow-up question, is there any sort of hood, or is there any sort of chemicals that would
No.
be stored? Is there any?
No, it is purely water. We're very traditional. We use water and toothbrushes.
All right, thank you.
This is Commissioner Burdett. Are any of the chimneys functional at all? Or are you going to cap them, or they are currently capped so that they couldn't be used as an exhaust vent on their own for any purpose?
I don't know the answer of whether they're operable. I don't think they're used, but the reason to cap them is to prevent insects and animals, coming in and protect from weather. And that's something that we do when we've been renovating historic buildings and parks. We've been capping the chimneys if they're not already capped.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Pelletier?
Thanks. Can you elaborate a little bit on the toilet pad by the parking and what that is going to look like or house, or I'm not, what's that for?
Well, I do have a comment on the, we're not 100% certain. We require it because there's volunteer programs in the summer, so it's installed every year. And if we have a requirement for a portable toilet, we make it accessible. We put it on a concrete pad. We oftentimes screen it on 3 sides with a wood screen. It was very tight in that location. Ideally, we like to put it at the tip of the aisle, so it just be rotated 90 degrees. But that's typically, it's a concrete pad, and it's about 9 feet square in order to accommodate a portable toilet that's almost 8 feet square and ADA accessible, and has to sit on a very flat surface.
So it won't be there all the time?
My understanding is that they lease it during the archaeology season in the summer.
Oh, okay.
But it may be there for a longer period of time. And typically, the portable toilets are taken out throughout parks in the winter season, so they're there for trail users, and there is a trailhead at the other end of the parking lot here, so it has more than one purpose.
Is there a photo in here that would show the visibility of that? Oh, there it is.
Yep, that's right.
And is that that's the location that you're showing on the
Well,
site
it would
plan?
move right where his cursor
Oh,
is,
okay.
just to the left. So that where the cursor is where we're trying to squeeze in the aisle and the parking pad. The grading here is very challenging. We're trying to avoid repaving and regrading the entire parking lot. So this was our best location. We studied many locations actually on the other side of the driveway, but they're just too close to the historic structures. So this is the closest we can get. It's a very long distance for anyone who's in a wheelchair to go from parking up to the house. It's a couple hundred feet.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? If not, would somebody like to start comments at all? Commissioner Galway.
Commissioner Galway. Yeah, a couple things. One, I certainly think in general agree with the approach. I think you're certainly heading in the right direction, so that's a good thing. As a mechanical engineer, and I'm seeing a couple things that I want to make sure that you take seriously as you finalize the design. One would be the location of these condensing units. It was difficult for me, and I think you verified it, that the main point of entry is on the porch side, and over to the left there, I don't know if that was the east or the west, but you had the two of the condensing units, and it's a shame that if the public and the building occupants are approaching, that they have to see them at all. So, in one hand, I applaud the fact that you're trying to put some under the porch. Maybe there's something you could do with those two units as well, since that is the main point of entry of approach to the home or to the building. The second thing is relative to the location of these condensing units under the porch. You've got all that ramp and so forth on the front, and I saw those stairs on the right, and I thought, well, maybe that was access to that under the porch, and it doesn't look like it is. My question would be, out of sight, out of mind, how will they be maintained, and how would they be repaired or replaced if they're hidden under that porch? And also, the performance of those units may suffer depending on the amount of free air and circulation that exists under that porch. So have your engineer take a close look at that to make sure that that doesn't become a problem. I think Commissioner Radu, I share her same sentiment about the humidification and control of humidity in a space. Basements typically, and this seems to be sort of a half basement or it's out of the ground a bit, but those typically are some of the highest locations of highest humidity in a building. And if you're trying to do, I think we're kind of kidding ourselves ultimately if you want to try to maintain tight humidity control in a basement or below grade space. It's going to be extremely difficult, if not possible. So I think you really have to take a close look at that to make sure that it's meeting your needs. And in an old building with, even if it's leakage through the foundation or it's leakage around the openings from upstairs down, the moisture will migrate quite quickly. And I just find it difficult to imagine that you're going to get the humidity control in that space that you're looking for. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Radu?
Just Commissioner Burdett mentioned the chimney caps as a potential for maybe reusing for any exhaust, or maybe capping them is kind of secondary. Maybe you should consider using them for the exhaust, and rather than like making holes through the envelope. But I guess if there is a need, and there is no other alternative on the brick, I was wondering, I should have asked this when was the question time, but about the size, and if there is like the size of the brick, maybe one brick unit goes away and there is a mesh or something that's not very visible. But I would not want to have bricks cut maybe kind of a unitized vent but of course the preference is to avoid that kind of penetration.
If there are no more questions, Commissioner Galway and Radu have already given their comments. No, that's fine. Are there any other comments? Commissioner Pelletier?
On the venting, the bathroom vents, I mean, they're pretty small. Can you go up through the roof? What is the roof? Is it slate roof?
The roof is slate.
It is.
It is an older slate roof. We're not touching it in this project. It'll probably be its own project down the road. So
Okay.
we'd like to avoid putting any openings in the roof. The architect is a historic architect, and they're very sensitive to these issues. And I think, I don't have information on the size of the vents, but we will certainly come back and show staff the sizes, what the materials are, and where they're proposed, and consider alternative locations.
I think getting them off the front of the house would be key. Are they all bath vents? Or is there, like, what kind of exhaust vents are they?
I'm sorry, you're asking what type of
Well, like,
vents?
are you venting big spaces? Are they
No,
bath vents?
They're
They're
restroom
restrooms.
only.
Okay, so
So
they're probably not that big
I
to
don't
begin with.
I'm guessing that they smaller than 6 by 6.
Right.
But-
Yeah,
But I
okay.
don't, again, I don't have dimensions.
Okay, well, I would agree with that
I'm going to
recommendation.
add to that, unless the brick is a large brick, I don't believe it's that large. It's in fairly normal size. Your 8 by 4 or your 4-inch round, you'd have a hard time squeezing it through a brick vent. So it's most likely it would be more than one brick. So and have them look at that closely.
Commissioner Haynes?
Well, to piggyback on that, I think then if there is a grill on the face, we have to be sensitive to the material of it. I mean, if it's a nice iron grill, cast iron, that's be appropriate for the house versus the typical plastic residential vent hood that we see. So that would be the other consideration, is if we have to have it through the brick, that the vent cover be historically appropriate in material and design.
If that is all the comments, then I'll finish up here. I think overall, yes, we agree you're on the right path. There's a lot of work to be done, but you've handled it specifically and with care. Getting a ramp up into that building obviously is a challenge. It's kind of from, you've got quite a few architects up here, and we all sit there and get concerned about how long our handicapped ramps are going to be, when we start doing math. And yours are out there, certainly. But I think you've done a good job with this. I think getting full access into this site is important and worthy, and also using the site for such a good purpose as archives and laboratory space. I'm looking at the photographs. I'm just stunned by, on the main front side of the house, it looks so small, and then on the back with the porch, it looks like some old resort hotel. But no, I think you're on the right path. I think you have some details to work out. Obviously, we seem to be obsessed with toilet venting tonight, and humidity control. But from the experience of several of the commissioners here, they know from practice that archives and humidity don't go together, and old buildings are challenging when it comes to maintaining the quality of the humidity and the air in the building. So we look forward to you coming back with the more finessed work, and thank you very much.
Do we want to respond to any of the staff's questions, or have we already?
Well, I think we've discussed the accessible portable toilet pad. I think as far as the parking goes and the pedestrian path, removal of the rear stairs and that. I think that all kind of goes with what's required.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Mm.
we address that.
I mean, I assume that this building has gone through quite a few renovations over the years, so I'm not seeing much on, it's the general look of the back porch, I think, that you're maintaining, while some of the stairways and doors, switching them out, I don't think is going to be a significant issue. I mean, we will probably be looking at that a little bit closer the next time we see you. And I think with this, I mean, I think they can come back when they're ready for a hop, but if they feel like they need a preliminary, we can do that. So either way, preliminary or a hop, we look forward to you coming back and talking to us again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, we move on to preliminary 2B, which is 7406 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there's, Madam Chair. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, this is the preliminary consultation for 7406 Maple Avenue in Tacoma Park. It's the subject property you see in front of you. Rises significantly up from the street level. It's a contributing resource to the district, constructed circa 1915. It's reviewed under the Tacoma Park Historic District Design Guidelines, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation. Again, this is the house viewed from the street. You see you've got a concrete retaining wall and then a steep rise up. And then this is looking up the driveway on the right side. You see the subject property here, and then a little bit of the non-historic addition at the very back. The house is difficult to photograph from any other perspective than head-on because of changes in grade and the large number of trees and other vegetation. The applicants propose to complete an interior rehabilitation at the subject property. Changes to the exterior include installing 2 windows on the right elevation, 2 window assemblies on the left elevation, replacing a window on the rear elevation, constructing a screened-in porch at the rear, replacing non-historic siding, and then constructing a terrace in the rear yard. So some of these are a little fainter than they show in the original application, but you can see this is the right elevation, and the applicant is proposing to remove the first floor door and window and replace them with a paired 6/1 aluminum clad wood window and restore the siding. There's some asbestos shingle siding that will be returned to wood clapboard to match the existing. On the left side, again, you see 2 windows that they're proposing to remove in the rear and installing 3 window assemblies, sort of a Chicago window, and then in the rear there will be 2 operable and 1 fixed casement window. And then at the rear, again, they're removing, well, actually both of the windows. One will become a door inside the porch, and then the other will become a pair of casement windows. And then the terrace is going to be installed in between the house and sort of the parking area in the back. But the larger reason that we're here is the proposed screened-in porch. It's a wood frame porch with AZEK trim and a shed roof with an open end at the rear. See here, with wood overhangs that's inset by approximately a foot on the north or east elevation here, and then it won't be at all visible on the other side. So staff finds that the aluminum-clad wood window replacement and siding repairs on the east and west elevations are compatible with the character of the house and appropriate under the design guidelines, Chapter 24A and the standards, and that the aluminum-clad wood window replacement and new wood siding on the rear elevation are also compatible with the character of the house and will not impact historic fabric, as that's a rear addition. Staff finds the size of the terrace will not overwhelm the character of the site or surrounding district. Staff finds the proposed material, wood framing and AZEK trim, are appropriate for the building addition, which is the screened-in porch, and new constructions in the Tacoma Park Historic District. Staff does not find that the porch's roof form is appropriate under the design guidelines or the Secretary of the Interior standards, which states additions do not need to replicate the early architectural styles, but are required to be compatible. So for requested feedback this evening, staff wants feedback from the HPC. Do they concur with the staff finding regarding the form of the addition? And what modifications does the HPC recommend to make the porch an approvable project element? For the stone terrace, does the HPC concur with staff's finding that the terrace is an appropriate feature? And do they recommend any revisions to the proposed hardscaping? And lastly, any recommended modifications or revisions to other elements of the project? And with that, I will answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for staff? I have one, and it's regarding the form of the roof. If you would go back and say what is required. The form is required to be compatible. And that's with the Secretary of the Interior standards, but is that also the Tacoma Park guidelines?
Right. So this is language from the design guidelines. The first paragraph is sort of guiding principles for how the HPC should review contributing resources. And the first bullet says, while additions should be compatible, they're not required to be replicative of earlier architectural styles. But it also says that alterations to features that are not visible from the public right-of-way should be allowed as a matter of course. So there's really a push and pull between what staff finds as a incompatible form, but something that, based on the photo and for anybody who did a site visit, it's just an itty-bitty sliver of the proposed screened-in porch that could at all be visible from the right-of-way when viewed in the absence of vegetation.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? If not, I'll ask the applicant to come forward. Okay. The applicant to come forward, the owner Ann Shalak and Paul Trisader, please. And if you would make sure the mics are on, and then identify yourselves for the record, please.
I'm sorry, I'm Paul Trisader, the architect.
Ann Shalak, I'm the owner of the property. Can you hear me?
Please press the button, it'll turn green. There you go.
Oh, sorry. I'm Ann Shalak. I'm the owner of the property, along with my husband, James Klein. And good evening, everybody. Let me just give you a tiny bit of history, our history with this house. At 7406 Maple, we've been there since 1984, so that's 40 years. When we purchased the house, it was divided into 3 apartments. And the first floor was separate from the 2 apartments on the second floor. There were 2 doors in the front, and there was a separate stairway in a door. One of the doors was to a separate stairway that separated the 2 upper apartments from the first floor. So one of the things that we did when we first moved in, because these were very apparent to from the street, was to remove the second door and to turn the house and to begin the process of renovation of the house into a single-family home that conformed with the architecture and the feel of the neighborhood. In addition, there was aluminum siding completely covering up the original wood siding. We removed all of that wood siding and we replaced it, almost all of it, not the non-conforming addition in the back, but with the original siding. So all of that could be seen from the street. even though the house is very high up, you might not have a complete sense of how far above the street it is, but it's very steep. All the people who come to visit us, we have to warn them about how steep it is to get up our front steps. And there's a second set of steps from the front yard up to the house, and then it goes even higher as you get to the back of the house. So there is a prior addition on the back of the house, and what that prior addition did is it did change the access of the house to the backyard, which if you think about other aspects of the guidelines, which talk about the importance of the environment and the setting of a house to how to think about the appropriate uses of the house, that there was very, very little access to the backyard, which is quite beautiful. And Vera has access to the trees and the yard, and to the sky, because we are about almost the highest house on the street because there's a steep hill that goes up. So we see these changes that we're making as a prior, continuing with our process of making the house consistent with its setting and its use, which was to, I think, enjoy the backyard, which all of the properties on that street do. So we see this design as trying to integrate the house, but in a way that does not, into the environment, does not affect anybody's view from the street. As the staff report notes, there's a sliver not of the back porch that you can see from the street, but a sliver of the roof, because the back porch is tiny. It doesn't take up the whole width of the house, and it is set in from both sides. From the street, as you're looking at the house on the left, you can see nothing of the back. From the right, you can't see very much because of that, the wall that is our driveway, so that you can see almost nothing from the street. So what we are trying to do is respect the environment of the house, the setting of the house, the design of the house, and our desire to enjoy the setting of the house in a way that doesn't conflict with the changing in any way the character of the neighborhood. So let me just highlight very briefly a few points. One is that it's really tiny what we're adding on. All the changes we're making to what was non-conforming before make it much more consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. We are taking off shingles. We are putting up wood siding. The windows that we're replacing are far more conforming with the character of the house than what was there that we inherited. So that's my first point. The second is that it is already, the change that the staff is most concerned about the porch, I think, not about the changes to what's already a non-conforming use, and we're making, I think, increasingly compatible with the neighborhood, is the general character of the neighborhood. So let me say two things about that. They said they couldn't find another house in the neighborhood that makes the kind of change that we have. Well, if you look at 240 Park Avenue, which is just two blocks over from our house, and our architect has some pictures of it for the slide. I have some, I've printed out some, but it's just 2 blocks away, and there is an addition, which is mid-century modern, has a very similar roof to the one we're having, and very similar windows in the back, and you can see it from the street because the street is very close to the house, and is at exactly the same level. Also, if you look at our house from the back, from where the porch is, and you look at the house from the back that's on the right, there is an addition which is not conforming at all. It's not mid-century modern, but it is modern in its design and its feel. And so what we would be doing would not be so different from what our neighbor has done already. And we see ourselves as am I making that noise?
No, that's
Oh,
7
okay.
minutes.
Maybe
But
perhaps my husband wants to add a couple things. Okay. Paul Tressiter, who you probably, most of you already know.
Well, shall I continue then?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I would like to just,
I'm sorry. You get 7 minutes for the applicants, and you are combined applicants. So maybe through questioning and answers,
okay,
you can
okay, thanks.
kind
That's
of
good.
inform us.
I'm sorry, I didn't,
Yeah.
I thought we were the applicants.
Yeah, we both are.
Yeah,
Okay,
we both represent.
yeah,
the
that's
applicant.
fine, that's fine.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the applicant?
Actually, I do.
Commissioner Nasser?
This is Commissioner Nasser. First of all, thank you for sharing your story very nicely. I have a question about the shape of the addition, the shape of the roof of the addition. Why did you choose that shape? Why is it sloping towards the house? And is there any reason for that type of roof?
Yes, I'll answer that. There were actually, I tested 3 different roof lines on the house. One was a flat roof, I mean, essentially flat. The second was a gable facing the rear, which was actually similar to what the staff had suggested. And the third was this one. Of the 3, this is the one that I felt connected the house best to the view and the sky and the yards and the trees. It opened out to the design, to the yard. One thing about a contemporary design, at least the way I was taught, was that you're designing from the inside out. You aren't imposing a form. You're getting your functions and you're expressing the functions. The architecture expresses those functions. And I felt because this was far in the rear, this was an opportunity to do that. And so from the inside, the idea of it just opening up to that view, I thought was good. And actually there was something else I liked about it was the fact that at the low end of that roof line, it actually blends into the existing low roof of the old addition. So there seemed to me there was a natural flow between the existing and the new. Obviously a different style, but it wasn't too large. I was concerned about scale. I didn't want to overwhelm the neighbors or the house. But that's how I, of those 3 choices, that's how I landed on this one.
I have one more question. Do you have any pictures of the back, actually? Did I miss it, or there's no picture of the back of the house? Is there, my main question is there any window overlooking that roof that you're proposing? Oh, okay, yeah, the drawings show that. So if you're in one of those
Yes,
rooms.
I submitted photographs of the rear of the existing house.
Actually, this is fine. My question is, if you're in any of those rooms, looking out those windows, how much of that roof you will see? Is it going to block your view? Is it like the way it's constructed and slopes? It's kind of, it slopes. I'm sure you can see out. It's not blocking the window, but would it block your view?
On the second floor windows you're talking?
Right.
Well, yeah, I think that's a little bit deceptive because as you can see from the side elevation, the windows are completely unobstructed.
Right, yeah, I understand that, yeah.
And your view of the sky and the trees from those upper windows, I feel would be adequate. It's obviously less than it was before.
All right, thank you.
This is Commissioner Burdett. I guess I'm going to speak to the rear addition as well. Now, that is only screening. There are no glazed windows, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so only
Yes.
screening.
Yes, and if I can just interject something.
Mm-hmm.
I had sort of envisioned it almost more like a garden structure as opposed to it's not a room addition. It's more like almost a garden structure. And that's another reason why I felt it didn't have to mimic the lines of the house.
And so the addition faces north, but you have this extended roof line going quite a ways out, several feet, 3 feet or so. And why?
Well, with screen porches, in the rain, you can get problems with wind-driven rain. And of course, as the wall gets taller, you have more potential for wind-driven rain coming in. So overhangs, both on the side overhangs are not as large, but the one on the end is larger in order to protect against the wind-driven rain.
And we have to look at this from the street. You know, what do you see from the street? Is it compatible from the street? But I have to ask, the photographs are all in the lushness of summer. So what does it look like in the winter? I mean, are there still enough trees and enough shrubbery around it, behind it, to pretty much mask the views of your neighbors?
Well, on the non-driveway side, in the winter, in the summer, it is impossible.
Okay.
Some of the vegetation is evergreen, a lot of it is, but it's also quite dense. So there, and because of the nature of how high it is, you can't see the back from the other side at all. Up the driveway, as you can see, there's very little vegetation in between what you see from the street and the back of the house. There's lots of vegetation around the house, but very little vegetation that would look any different in the winter from what you can right now see from the street, because the driveway, except if we had a very large snow, would not wouldn't change your view of the back from the street at all. And it's, as I said, it's inset from the side of the house there. And so it is just maybe a piece, a tiny sliver of that roof line that you.
Yeah.
If I may speak to that, the shrubbery that you see there, Commissioner, along that wall is some very scraggly hedge that's barely worth the name. It doesn't even get cut. I wish it were. I wish it were more substantial, but that's all there is.
Thank you.
And one of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and rain. Actually, the roof.
Microphone.
I'm sorry. The porch will be facing, it's mostly sort of west, which is actually where the rain comes in from. That's that side of the house. So Paul was speaking to the overhang, so it would be very useful there. When we have to close windows in this, because it's raining, it's that part of the house that gets hit.
And again, it's a screened porch. It's not a glazed porch. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, would anybody like to make their comments regarding this project? Commissioner?
I'll start.
Oh, Commissioner Haynes, yes. of course.
Thank you. I like to start first on this one. Well, I'm just going to come right out and say it. I really like it. I'm not bothered at all by the roof form. It's in the back of the house. I don't think you can really see it from the street. It doesn't affect the streetscape. We often like additions to that needs to be compatible, but yet we like it to be distinctive so that we can tell the historic resource from the addition, and clearly you do that. If anything, I'd say if you could pull it a little bit farther back, away from the back of the historic resource, another 18 inches perhaps, to give it a little more elbow room between the shed and the back of the house. You know, maybe pull it back a little bit more, again, to further distance the historic resource from the addition. But I'm not, I don't have a problem with the roof form. I like the garden concept. It seems appropriate for the back of the house. It creates a private retreat for this 40-year resident, so they deserve that. I don't think it has an impact on the historic resource, certainly not from the streetscape. Given the elevation of the house from the street and the long distance, I think it would be barely perceptible to anybody in the wintertime or other. So I fully support the project.
Any other comments? All right, I'll close up then. Or Commissioner Reddy, were you going to speak? Okay.
I guess whether I like it or not, the addition, it's not on the sides of the house. And I think that's when I would like really evaluate it. Is it compatible or is it not? Because it's at the back, I really think it's fine and would be fine even if it would be enclosed, I mean, in my opinion. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with the shape.
Commissioner Galway.
Yeah, real quick. I certainly don't think it's compatible, but I think given the fact that it's in the back and the location, I don't think that it's an issue. I would be very careful about the water that sheets off that roof, and does it actually end up going up over the flashing at the windows, and you know, could you have a roof issue due to too much rain on that roof? So look at that carefully. Thank you.
So this is Commissioner Burdett. I'll close out. I don't think I could be quite as hesitant as Commissioner Haynes in my comments. I do concur with him. I think it's a fine design. It really speaks to mid-century modern. We see a lot of work through here that thinks it's mid-century, and it's not. And this one truly does feel like some of the mid-century we have in the DC area. One of the things, when I first saw this, I kept going through my mind is some of the things we see coming through here are demolitions of additions that were put on by previous owners. Additions in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and all of those additions were considered wonderful design in their era. And of course, now we look at them and go, oh, well, you know. But this one really has an elegance to it, and I can support this design, and I agree about the water shedding on it, but good luck, and I don't have any issues with any of the windows or other work you have, or the terrace. So we look forward to you coming forward with a hop soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If anybody can make it up our driveway to see the back of our house, more power to them.
Thank you very much. And
Moving on to preliminary 2C at 200 Market Street, Brookville. Is there a staff report?
Yes, this is a preliminary consultation for the subject property in the Brookville Historic District. The property was designated as a spatial resource when the district was created. Spatial resources are defined as vacant or unimproved properties. In 2004, the HPC approved construction of a new 2.5-story L-shaped residence measuring 2,465 square feet. The existing dwelling is located approximately 15 feet from Market Street, which would be, the front of the house would be right here, and adjacent to an unnamed alley, and the alley is this area here. There are 3 standards of review here: the county code, the Secretary of the Interior Rehab standards, and in this case, the Town of Brookville zoning ordinance also applies. So the town's ordinance requires an 8-foot side yard setback, a 15-foot front yard setback, and a 40-foot rear yard setback. The subject property is outlined in blue here, and you can see that it is irregularly shaped. The house currently meets that 15-yard setback, as I pointed out, but the proposed deck would not meet either the 8-foot side yard setback or the 40-foot rear yard setback. However, as you can see down here, the Brookville Planning Commission may approve extensions into these setbacks under Section 10-601. I understand the applicant's representative has had preliminary conversations with the town and will have more information on that when it's their time to speak. Here's the photos of what the existing building looks like. And I'll point out the key photo is these that show the existing deck on the back and porch. Those will be merged to form one large single deck. And here is the site plan showing where that new enlarged deck will be located. It'll be 490 square feet, and like the existing deck, the expanded deck will be built of pressure-treated wood frame, and the deck stairs, railing, caps, and trim will be made of PVC. The deck floor is proposed to be covered by Trex, and the deck will extend to the west all the way to the property line where that alley is, so right here, and then it will be approximately 35 feet from the side property line, which is over here, this black line that's partially visible. Here are the floor plan is the floor plan to the left and the construction drawing on the right. So staff supports merging of the existing porch and deck to create a single large deck, but recommends the size, location, and materials be revised. The current porch measures 114 square feet. That's this porch right here, and then the current deck is 96 square feet. So at 490 square feet, the single large deck will be nearly double in size than those spaces. Moreover, the deck will be prominently visible from the right-of-way, as you can see from this photo. This is from Market Street, where it rounds the corner. Large decks are not readily visible from the right-of-way in the district, so staff recommends the deck be reduced in size to limit its visibility. The deck also must meet either the town's setbacks or get approval from Brookville's Planning Commission before the HPC can review the HOP for the deck. Staff also does not support the proposed Trex decking and instead seeks a wood or paintable composite flooring that is more compatible to the character of the historic district. The proposed decking would need to meet all requirements for porch flooring should the HPC approve the policy for the appropriateness of substitute materials for porch and deck flooring by the time that the HPC reviews the HOP. Staff would only support the proposed PVC trim and railing if it is a solid core. So these are the 4 items to include in the HOP: a rear elevation drawing that shows the proposed deck, specifications for the new construction, the decking, balustrade trim, and rail caps, and the side and rear setback measurements should be included on the site plan, and also approval from the Brookville Planning Commission if the setbacks are not met. And of course, HPC feedback on the appropriateness of the deck's location, the deck's design, the deck's materials, and of course, any other comments. Questions for staff?
Any, Commissioner Galway?
Yes, Commissioner Galway, you mentioned in one of your recommendations to reduce in size to either meet the setbacks or to get approval. And I wasn't certain in looking at this, how much reduction would that be? Do you have a guess in order to meet the setbacks?
Well, if you can see on the site plan here, this line, this dotted line is actually the 8-foot setback, so it would have to be reduced in size quite considerably. They'd have to remove, this whole triangular section here in order to meet that. But when the applicants have their time to speak, they can give more information on how the town of Brookville feels about the proposal.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? If not, I ask the applicant to come forward, Mr. Andrew Fuller. And please make sure the mics are on, and then identify yourselves for the record, and you will have 7 minutes to make a presentation, or you can just answer our questions, whichever you prefer.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Fuller. I'm the homeowner. I will defer most questions to Lamont Green, who's actually working the project.
Yeah, I'm Andy's father-in-law, but I happen to, in another lifetime, been a very skilled carpenter, so I'm going to be doing the bulk of the work. We did talk to Chris Scanlon of the Brookville Commission before we went forward with the pushing the framing out to the edge of the property line. And he indicated that since this, the 18-foot alley was owned by Brookville, that they wouldn't have a problem with that as for the setback. We're not married to any of the materials. The material on the deck currently is Trex, so we were just using like for like. The railings have made the existing deck unusable. We can't let anybody out there because they're rotting and they're falling down. So the PVC was obviously for maintenance purposes, but the one that we have specified is very high quality. You can't really tell from 10 feet away that it's not wood. But we're not married to any of this. We're more than happy to adjust our materials list to accommodate the hop. So we can get with Chris and just noodle that part out. The only thing that I'm really concerned about, because setbacks and materials aren't not really unsolvable, is the fact that because of the placement of the house on the lot, the line of sight to the backyard is absolute. There's no way to not see whatever is going on back there, because the Market Street makes a right-hand turn right there, so the back of the house is pretty much visible from the neighbor's driveway, from Phyllis's driveway. So one of the things that we proposed as maybe an option is to put up a hedge in the back. You see on the photograph, you can see the stairs coming down in the back of the house, and a hedge from right there over towards the property line would obscure essentially the entire deck, with the exception of about 3 feet of the framing, which would be outside of that visual line if we ended the hedge at the property line. So an option could be to change the floor plan to lop off that section of the deck, which would in fact be about 3 feet and would give you about a 3-foot setback. We're open to adjusting any of these things in order to get us where we need to go. So we're looking for guidance as far as being able to not see the deck from the street, which is the real issue, I think, in all of this.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Nasser?
Commissioner Nasser, is your main goal is you want to connect the two porches? Is that your main goal?
I'm
It's
sorry,
not just,
repeat that?
is your goal to connect the two porches and it's not
Yes,
just expanding it?
it just makes sense
So as
to
long
do
as
it.
they're connected,
Yeah,
you're
it
okay.
makes all the sense in the world to
All
do
right.
that.
One more question. Are you extending, how do I explain it? You're not changing the footprint of the decks. You're just technically connecting the two.
We're just connecting them, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? I have a final one.
I have one.
Okay, go Commissioner Pelletier.
Give me any time to think. So would you be amenable, I'm just looking at the view from the street, you know, like as you're coming down, what the decks that you currently have, which are obviously visible from the street. But if you followed the property line, or followed the setback line, I should say, that 8 feet setback line,
Right.
then the view from the street wouldn't change. That picture, that photo that we're looking at, where, if you can go back to that upper right-hand photo, that
Right.
would essentially be what you would still see.
That is correct.
And have you investigated that? Are you amenable to that, or do you just not want to do that?
I'm amenable to anything that you guys, I mean, we'll do
Anything?
what you need us to do. You know, we want to connect those decks and have a better living space for
Right.
the family. I
Right,
mean,
I get that.
obviously, that's why you would put a deck outside.
Okay, okay, thanks.
This is Commissioner Burdett. My question is about the alley. Is there any risk that that alley would ever be used by the?
Not according to Chris Scanlon. That it's undeveloped. Nobody even really knows it's there.
Okay.
It's completely I mean, we mow it, so we take care of it. And there's 2 trees in it, but they're not ours. They're on the Brookville property.
Property, okay.
So, and they spit black walnuts on our cars all the time, so.
Of course, yeah.
That's-
Okay, thank you. I think since we're out of questions, would anybody like to start with some comments about this?
I have a
Commissioner
comment. Nestor? I guess if there are no issues with the setback, in general, I would kind of scale down the porches and just connect them in a way that maybe create a notch at the corner, or just simply kind of have a diagonal perpendicular to the property line, and just have I know it might look odd, but maybe study that and see how it would look. So your porch, the connection of the 2 decks won't kind of poke into the alley and into the
Right.
neighboring,
Right. Well,
property.
and the other thing is, obviously, the more usable space we get, obviously, the
Of
more
course.
we like it.
Of
But
course, of course.
Like I said,
But
we want to.
I think it's just an idea if you want to look at it, see
Yeah.
how much space you get by doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Haynes, you're reaching? Yes.
Well, I think, even from the street, the view will be difficult to really understand the additional deck, meaning that photo from the upper right as you're coming down Market Street.
Right. That's the other problem, is it's up higher than the house.
Right.
Where you turn is higher up than the house, so
Right.
it's
So you're
it's
kinda
really
looking-
difficult.
Kind of looking down towards it.
Yeah.
That view, I really, not significantly going to change if you're bringing it out to the existing porch column. You'd have to be much closer to fully grasp the size of it. I suppose if it's, again, not a problem with the Brookville to be that close to the alley, then I could be okay with it. I mean, maybe chamfering the corners to give some relief. Yes, that my colleague was looking for, I think is not a bad idea. Maybe you could do it at both corners to, again, just maybe soften the corners. I do appreciate the need to gain usable space, functional space out there. So in general, I'm supportive of the project, and as long as you're meeting the setbacks and the Brookville's happy, then I could support it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Radu?
I think it's going to be large no matter what. And I know we don't really take vegetation into consideration when we look at these things. but I think some vegetation will help, even if
Yeah.
we cannot really recommend.
Yeah, but I think that we would want to do that anyway, because, who wants to be exposed to the street when you're out, having a, whatever, in the backyard.
Well, this is Commissioner Bernard, and as a person who lives in this area with a little tiny yard that I'm always putting very large shrubs in that aren't really fit for as small as the yard I have, I envy you that you get to get some lovely specimens and let them just really do their thing and get really big, and just the kind of eye catcher as someone's driving down the road. Go for it. Get some really wonderful specimens.
Done.
And there's certainly a lot of nurseries up around your neck of the woods. I agree with everybody else. Playing around with the shape a little bit would help break down the mass.
Okay.
And I would also agree that you might want to avoid that line of that alley. You never know what's going to happen, and the last thing you want to do, if nothing else, frame this thing so that if you have to lop off a corner, you can do it without demoing the whole thing. But other than that, I think you are hearing that we're in general support of the project, and we look forward to you bringing a hop forward soon, and you can work with staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving along quickly, we're doing very well. Preliminary 2D at 25 Montgomery Avenue, and is there a staff report?
Yes, there is, Madam Chair. This is the staff report for 25 Montgomery Avenue in Tacoma Park. It's a subject property you see in front of you. It is a non-contributing resource to the Tacoma Park Historic District that was constructed about 1989. This is reviewed under the Tacoma Park Historic District Design Guidelines, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation. So the applicant proposes to install approximately 148 linear feet of a 6-foot-tall, board-on-board privacy fence to enclose what they consider the rear of the property that runs along, this is Montgomery Avenue, and then Hickory Avenue is to the right there. The property is currently enclosed by a 4-foot-tall picket fence. What you do see is that in the neighboring property, which is 19 Montgomery, there is an 6-foot-tall alternating board fence that aligns with the front wall plane of that house. So there is a 6-foot-tall fence along here. But the rest of the fence that is on the public side is 4 feet tall, open picket wood. So the HPC usually requires fences in the Tacoma Park Historic District and forward of the rear wall plane to be no taller than 48 inches with an open picket design constructed using traditional materials. This helps to retain the open park-like setting that is one of the primary characteristics of the Historic District. In November of last year, the HPC denied an application for a 6-foot fence at 5 Columbia Avenue, which is a corner property at all, that would have run parallel to Pine Avenue. There are a number of exceptions in the Historic District. What you see here are fences that the HPC has approved at some point. This is the rear, in the upper left, you see the rear of 7105 Carroll Avenue, which is an oddly shaped lot, but the rear runs along Columbia Avenue. And the upper right is 7118 Poplar Avenue. Now that block that's at the corner of Poplar and Columbia. However, there are no houses that front the south side of Columbia on the street there. And then 7200 Maple Avenue, which is at the corner of Maple and Tulip. This is one that we saw for an addition relatively recently and solar panels. And they have a 6-foot-tall solid board fence that begins at the rear wall plane of the house. So that the lot is open forward of the rear wall plane, but to the rear is a solid 6-foot board fence, and then further down Tulip, the fences are all either, they're no taller than 48 inches. So again, non-contributing resources are supposed to receive the most lenient level of design review. Most alterations should be approved as a matter of course. Again, the only exceptions would be major additions and alterations to the scale and massing of these non-contributing resources which affect the surrounding streetscape and/or landscape and could impair the character of the district as a whole. And staff finds the proposed fence appearance is incompatible with the open character of the surrounding streetscape because the fence has the likelihood of creating a wall along Montgomery Avenue. And staff finds that the proposed fence would obscure a portion of the view of 19 Montgomery Avenue, which is an outstanding resource. So the HPC may find another fence design that creates the sense of privacy desired by the applicants while retaining the district's character. Staff's initial thoughts include a 4-foot tall fence with a latticed topper or a more open 6-foot fence design. Some of these are referred to as semi-private, and that was in the staff report. And these are just a number of examples that I pulled off of the internet as searching for semi-private fences that are 6 feet tall. So again, you see one here in the lower right that I actually think is a 5-foot fence with about a 1-foot lattice topper. And then the others are a little more open. The other thing that I'll point out is that the HPC does not review plantings, only tree removals. So additionally, trees and shrubs, which it admittedly would take some time to grow in, could be planted behind the fence and could provide an opaque wall if done in an evergreen. It would be year-round. So the questions for the HPC at this evening's hearing is, does the HPC concur with staff's finding that the proposed fence along Montgomery Avenue and the western property line are incompatible with the character of the district? Does the HPC find a 6-foot tall semi-private fence could be installed along Montgomery Avenue without detracting from the character of the district as a whole? Or does the HPC find that vegetative screening is the only method of providing privacy to the western and northern portion of the subject property? And with that, I will answer any questions. And I'll just note the applicants are here and have waited very patiently, so I may direct some questions to them as well.
Any questions for the staff? There are no questions for the staff. So let's, if the applicants would care to come forward and make sure the mic's on and identify yourself. Stephen Edminster and Bill Gunnelson, I think, is not, one of those names isn't right.
Sorry, he's the contractor who would do this work. But this is my wife, Laura Coughlin, who also lives at 25 Montgomery Avenue.
Okay. Is your mic on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just not speaking into it.
Okay. So you have 7 minutes to make a presentation, or we can, and explain your case, or we can ask you questions, or both. So it's up to you.
I don't think I need 7 minutes, but I'll just make a couple of remarks.
Sure.
What I would say about this property, we lived there for a number of years now, off and on, and you know, we've rented it out, but we've always come back to it, and we love it. It's a very narrow, long property. It's a corner property, and because of that, you know, the setback from the house to the sidewalk is all of 20 feet or so. And when you're sitting in the backyard, or you're even sitting in our living room, people walking by can see into the living room, see you watching TV or whatever you're doing. And when you're sitting out in our backyard, what we call our backyard, on the north side of, on the west side of the property, you can also see very clearly into that space. About 14 years ago, we planted a hedge along the what would that be, the west
Montgomery Avenue.
Along the Montgomery Avenue side, and it's grown very well in some spots, but not in others. And so you can still see through there. There are lots of gaps in the hedge. It's not the best hedge in the world, but I mean, it could be good over time. But also, one of the main problems is not that, but on the west side of the property, which is abuts 19 Montgomery Avenue, you know, there basically our driveway is there, and it's a concrete driveway, and we have a very little bit of dirt space there where I've tried to grow some hedges, put in some hedges there, but they've always died. And so I think you would need to tear out our driveway, which is not something we particularly want to do. But as you can see with the red circle there, that's what you're looking at. There's no space to plant anything right there. But from that spot, you can clearly see into our living room and our backyard. So that we were really hoping for some more privacy, and a fence would solve that problem. Another problem that is not brought up in the application, but is important to us, is that we have 2 dogs, and we really would love to have some space in the yard to let the dogs out and feel like we're not terrorizing people walking by when the dogs come running up to say hello or bark at them. Also, one of our dogs is a puppy who's going to be a very big dog. And, you know, if there's basically the other morning, a deer was walking down Montgomery Avenue, and he almost got over the fence when he's 5 months old. It's a concern to us for his safety and for the safety of other passersby. And I don't think a picket fence would solve that problem. That's why those are our motivations. And so I thought that given sort of the uniqueness of this property, and given, I think, what are legitimate concerns for us of both privacy and safety for our pets and passersby, we made this application. Do you have anything?
No, I think you covered it. The only thing I would say, which we also didn't put in the application, but we kind of have been thinking about it since, is mainly because of the dogs that Steve mentioned, to put an internal fence so that we could fully close off the back area, like just a fence going from our front gate to our front door with a gate, so that the dogs could just be contained in there. I think that's the only thing I would add.
Yeah.
So what Dan was just showing, you're basically, the red line is what you would like to do
That's what we would love to enclose.
and then cross across the yard, right?
Yeah, so the end of that is the entrance to our house is where we would close off, the portion of the yard that's outlined in red.
Questions? Jeff, Commissioner Haynes?
So just to clarify, the existing picket fence would remain along Montgomery and Hickory. That's currently there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would remain, and so where the red line is, you would like to have a 6 foot tall with a return. And would the return fence be the same type of fence? Is that what you're looking for, or would it?
The what fence?
Well, where the fence returns back to the house.
So that would be a lower fence.
That'd be a lower fence. Yeah. Okay, and that's really just to keep the dog in the back.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
That would be like the picket fence.
Questions? Any other questions? I would like to ask a question of the staff. Can you refresh my memory for Tacoma Park about where a high fence has to stop in relationship to the house before it extends? In a lot like this, where would a tall fence have to stop and drop?
Typically, it's 15 feet from the corner. There's the height limitation for fences to, that's in the zoning ordinance.
From what corner? The house corner
No,
or
no,
the street corner?
From the street intersection, from the corner here.
Okay.
There is no, and then beyond that, the zoning limitation is 6 feet 6 inches. But the HPC has always, because of the nature of the historic districts and their identified characteristics, they have always had much lower restrictions for that. But there is not a hard and fast dimension that's adopted as part of the Tacoma Park Historic District design guidelines.
And, and the precedent, or the other properties with the 6 foot fence right on the sidewalk on the street, do those pretty much predate the historic district, or they are just from a prior commission of which we don't know who was on it at the time?
So in my research, the 7200 Maple did receive a hop. It was on an expedited form, so there wasn't a whole lot of analysis for it, but the owners there replaced an existing 6-foot-high fence with a 6-foot-high fence with a different design. So the dimensions and general characteristics of the fence were the same, but I think they went from a stockade-style fence to the fence that you see before you. And I believe that was 2014 or 2015. 7105 Carroll was also a fence that replaced an existing fence that had a hop. I don't remember the date off the top of my head for that one. And I believe the 7118 Poplar was a fence that may predate the district.
The most recent example that we have that is most similar to this, which Dan had mentioned in his staff report, and I've joined the meeting, so I'm going to attempt to share out my screen here. Isaac, can you allow me to share out, and we'll switch from the staff computer? Okay, there we go. So this is the approval at 5 Columbia. As Dan was saying, it was at the corner of Columbia and Pine, where the applicant had proposed 6, so it was going to be an in-kind replacement up here, but they had requested a 6-foot fence in all locations, and the staff recommended and the HPC approved a 4-foot fence here. The design that was approved, let's see if I can toggle this back up. So along the east property line, it was approved to be a 6-foot tall with a lattice top. So that was on the interior lot line. And then for the portion that faced the corner, right, so that was the in-kind portion, sorry, between the property line. And then, sorry, it's lagging a little bit. And then this was the design of the 4-foot fence that was approved facing the corner. So it was not, if I'm remembering this correctly and looking at it, it was not an open picket design. It was a 4-foot stockade style fence, but it was required to be 4 feet high in this. Scroll back down. Right. In this location here at the yellow.
And was this the family that had kids playing and kicking soccer balls?
Yes, they had athletic equipment in the yard that their kids were using, and they were, what they had said at the time, they were concerned about safety issues and other issues. And this is what the HPC approved for their property. And this was in December of this past, December 2023.
Thank you. So we're still asking questions of you. Does anybody, with all this that we've just talked about, anybody have a question? Commissioner Haynes.
Well, my question is, of the alternates, semi-open, yes, out of these examples, what do you think of these? Would you be open to any of these designs?
So, sorry, the board-on-board fence in the my lower right with the lattice on top would be a perfectly acceptable fence. And in fact, that, the board-on-board fence, the portion of it that exists on our property that is 6 feet tall, you can see through it, light comes through it. It's not a complete stockade-style fence the way others are suggesting.
I would just add, we like that alternative the best among the alternatives because it does give a little bit more, blocking for the dogs and the sort of relationship between the dogs and the street, and still would give us increased privacy.
So the one on the lower right-hand side with the lattice?
Yes.
That kind of lattice, yeah. Okay. All right, well, if we have no questions, would someone like to make comments, commissioners? Commissioner Redu.
I mean, I heard that they would accept, well, they're willing to accept a 6-foot fence with lattice, but like, I'm looking at the, just like the district, it is an open district, and it is a corner lot, so I understand the conundrum of the owner, but it is like walking along the fence, even with a little more openness. I'm still concerned about the length of this fence. I assume there is really, you wouldn't be willing to, I mean, I guess in our way on comments, so I'm not asking questions, but about the pulling it back a little from the street, or I don't know, like another solution. I'm a little still concerned with this, even with the more open fence.
Any other comments? Commissioner Haynes?
Well, I think the fact that the corner is a lower 4-foot picket fence, that's being maintained, certainly maintains the openness at the corner. The question becomes, what's the impact on the streetscape and the neighborhood pattern of fencing? And I kind of, I guess, sympathetic to the owner's needs. It's a narrow lot. They have preserved the corner, almost half the length has been preserved as a 48-inch open picket fence. So I kind of feel it's kind of meeting in the middle, that 6-foot tall fence with the lower board and batten and lattice top, again, helps the scale of that fence, makes it a little more porous with the lattice top. And so I think I could support that as being consistent with maintaining the open landscape nature of the streetscape while still giving them the privacy and security and keeping the dog in that they're looking for. So I think that's a reasonable compromise.
Commissioner Galway?
Commissioner Galway. I have no issue whatsoever with the 6 foot in the backside and the side yard. I'm struggling a bit with the 6 foot along the front. My preference certainly would be to see a 4-foot high fence there. That's my opinion. I know it's not what you're looking for, but I think it's more consistent with what we're seeing and what we're hoping to see from the neighborhood. I'm a little confused, and you said that the fence that you haven't shown that would go back to the house could be a 4-foot, but then you used the argument that from the dog's perspective that the 4-foot might not be high enough, so I would question why it would be okay in one location and not okay in another.
I actually measured our fence this morning because I saw the staff report, and it's actually a 3.5-foot fence. It's not a 4-foot fence. I measured it, and so, it might be a little longer in some spots because of the grading of the earth, but overall, it's a 3.5-foot fence.
So I think in order to support it moving forward, maybe having some visuals or photographs with the fence showing up to give us a better perspective of how that would look might be of value to me, because right now, like I say, I'm struggling to prove it.
I would just add that, I mean, we would keep, like we've said, we would keep the lower fence on the street corner side of Montgomery and Hickory, but we're looking to have the higher fence in the back. And the reason that we would want one that would sort of be an internal section is precisely to keep the dogs in the area where the fence is indeed high, we're hoping would indeed be higher.
Except for that one spot.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier?
I'm looking at your house on Google Maps, on Street View, and I kind of concur with what the other commissioners are saying. I was wondering if you could keep the 36-inch or 42-inch fence that you've got as far back as the back of, because you have the center gable on that side. Which street is that? That's
Montgomery?
Hickory. On Montgomery, you've got like the two sort of open sides, and then you've got the center gable in the middle of the elevation. If you could keep the low fence all the way back and do the kind of backyard enclosure with the 6-foot fence a little further back on your elevation to show more of your house at the corner. I could support that. I feel like the 6-foot fence just goes a little bit too far, especially if you're gonna have a return coming back. I don't know if it's 6 foot or 4 foot or whatever, but if the enclosed area was pushed away from the corner, then I could support this. I just feel like there's a lot of 6-foot fence. I live on Ethan Allen, and like, it's not historic district, and everybody's got their 6-foot fence up as you're driving down. And there's people's backyards that are on the street, and it just makes for a not great streetscape. But I think I understand your plight. I have dogs of my own. But I just think if you could shrink the 6-foot high area on Montgomery back so that people could see the middle gable of your house and then like your front door area with the low fence. I just think it would be more humane or something. I don't know, but I hear what you're saying about the 6-foot fence, and I could support some of it. I just can't support all of what you're showing currently.
So this is Commissioner Burdett. I think I'm going to close this out now. I knew this was going to be the toughest one we have tonight of all the cases, and you heard all of them, so you know that. But I have to concur with the other commissioners is that Tacoma Park is an open community as far as landscape viewing. There are some high fences around, and they're usually on a corner lot, and so you fall within that category. But at the same time, I agree with Commissioner Pelletier that if you pull that high fence back at least to the furthest wall of that gable on Montgomery away from Hickory, that would be better. The dogs can run in that area. I'm wondering if you couldn't deal with a 5-foot tall fence, because at 5 foot, someone my height could actually peer over it, but probably wouldn't, because I'd be walking down the street and here's this wall next to me, and I'm not going to be doing this. I'm 5'4", so I would have to do that. And that's kind of obvious. You're peering over somebody's fence as opposed to just looking over your shoulder. So I think a 5-foot might be an option, and it would be worth bringing some photographs that have been photoshopped a little bit to show different height fences and what it's going to be. And a good dog trainer would help with your dog. And another consideration is, this is not a historic house. We understand that. And it's on a corner lot, and that's a complication too. But sometimes you can get creative with your window treatments inside to give you the view, but not so much, feel a little more private. I live in a small house on a small neighborhood not too far from you guys. And I use lace curtains to give me the privacy during the day. At night, not so great, but during the day, no one can see in my house. So I think come talk to the staff, maybe work out some photos, because I don't think we're really convinced yet on the 6-foot fence all the way around. I do appreciate you are willing to consider one of these more open privacy fences. That is a great step forward, that you're willing to look at something a little more open, and that's going to be a big help. And maybe that 6-foot fence with the lattice on top would be the way to go, simply because it's 4 feet and then 2 feet, and that break in height would make it appear a little bit lower. Even though it is a 6-foot fence, it isn't going to feel like a big 6-foot stockade fence. So again, I'm not sure we're all entirely sold on this yet, but I think a little more graphic work and thought, you can get it there, and you can talk to staff that you could probably bring it back as a hop to us once you figure out what's really needed. But I don't think any of us want to see a stockade fence on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So a more open fence
We
would
don't like
work.
that either.
I don't like that style anyway.
Good. Because it is a very cute house, and driving past it, I drove past it, and I would not have known it wasn't a historic house in Tacoma if I didn't know it beforehand, looking at the report. So that says something.
Can I just ask a quick question? I'm a little confused on where the line on the gabled part of the house,
Right
right there?
Right there.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's what Commissioner Pelletier was saying. It's like that pulls it back a little bit further, and kind of it's stopping at a good point related to the architecture of the house.
Yeah.
And again, if it's about the dogs having a place to run, they've got a place to go.
Yeah.
But it's, to get them beyond that point, you just have to keep an eye on them or keep them on a run, a long leash sort of thing. So, yeah, it's a tough lot. Corner lots are like this. They're really complicated, and we see these on all the historic districts. There's always houses on corner lots, and they're always the ones that take time for us to figure out. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. No, that's. Yes, moving on to Historic Preservation Tax Credits, Group 4.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We have the Group 4 tax credits for your consideration this evening. Group 4 is made up of 14 applications consisting of $515,456.34 in eligible expenditures. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the cases. Otherwise, we would be looking for your affirmation and approval of this group.
Do I have a motion to approve the Group 4 tax credit applications?
I'll make a motion that the Historic Preservation Commission approve the tax credit for Group 4 for calendar year 2023 in the amount of $515,456.34.
Do I have a second?
This Commissioner Rado, I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Terrific. All right. Minutes for,
No,
what? Oh, the minutes.
no, the work session.
The work session.
Oh,
The
I'm
adoption of the
sorry.
HBC.
I'm looking, okay. So next, we have the work session and adoption of HPC policy number 2401 for the appropriateness of substitute materials for porch and deck flooring. And I will hand this over to Commissioner Pelletier, the chair of the committee.
Thank you. I make a motion that the HPC adopt policy number 24-01 for the appropriateness of substitute materials for porch and deck flooring.
Do I hear a second?
This is Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? This motion is approved.
Oh, yes. I request that the staff pursue an illustrated guide to these guidelines, and that we revisit these requirements in the next, 18 months to 2 years. Thank you.
And moving on, minutes for May 8th, 2024. Did anybody read them besides me? If not, I will make the motion that we approve the meeting minutes from Wednesday, May 8th of 2024. Do I have a second?
It's Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
These minutes are approved.
The minutes for May 22nd are not available, so we'll have those at the next meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a commission item? Did we decide whether or not? I don't think we do. Okay, no commission items. Staff items.
One staff item, we are coming up to the end of the fiscal year, so it's time to process your transportation reimbursements. I send those into the county executive's office quarterly. So if you have your forms to fill out tonight, we can pass those out to you tonight. And then for anybody, I will submit the ones tomorrow. And then for our next June meeting on June the 22nd, I can submit those the next day. And the county executive staff has told us that any meetings that happen after the 15th of the month, they'll work to expedite those payments. The last 2 weeks of the fiscal year, it's a little dicey getting things paid out, but I will absolutely do my best to get your reimbursements in. But please fill out your forms tonight so we can get you reimbursed for tonight's meeting and then any of the past ones you might not have submitted for.
What if we don't remember what we've submitted for?
I have those
Okay.
here. As we scan them, I can pull them up for you.
That would be
to
very
remind you.
helpful because it's recent. It's been within the last 2 months. I just don't know the exact dates.
If we completed and emailed it to you tomorrow morning, would that work or no?
That's fine. That's totally fine. Yeah, that's fine.
I submitted a while back and never heard anything. So
I'll
sometimes, I have gotten payments before, but I think the
Yeah.
last one that I submitted was probably 6 months ago, and I never heard anything.
Do you remember? We can do this
Yeah.
after we adjourn. I'll be happy to show
Okay.
everybody the forms and
What you
follow up to get you
received.
paid.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
And if that is the last item, then we can adjourn. And I would just like to point out, we are way ahead of schedule tonight. So, thank you. Great job. Close.